Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Facebook Live. My name is Karen Felsted, and I'm the CEO and owner of Beyond Indigo Pets. We have Dr. Karen Felsted back with us today, which is just a delight. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's kind of funny because you and I were talking about time, and when we started this, I was thinking like, wow, time has flown since I last had you on the show, and it's crazy. Like we're in this weird space, right?
It's hard to believe that the pandemic is now, 6 or 7 months, and I haven't traveled since the first week of March. And it's been 20 years since I didn't travel for a 6 or 7 month time period. It's very weird. Yeah.
It's very weird. And you and I were just talking about all the places in the world.
All our vacation places.
Because we're world travelers and we like traveling just for pleasure or for work. And,
yes.
So that kind of brings us to today because we want to focus on time in the sense of the last end of 2021. Because, next week starts October, which means October, November, December. We're in the last 12 weeks.
We're in the last quarter. Yeah.
And running a business, the last quarter kind of has some significance, especially if your business year ends on December 31st. Other people's business years might end in a different calendar.
Sure, but most people,
yeah, most people end December 31st. And those are kind of the discussions we're talking about today is like, hey, maybe because of the pandemic, we should give ourselves a little bit more runway to plan for things versus a little less because we already have one bonfire going. We don't get more bonfires or oil to the one we have just because we didn't take a moment. So we were talking about just the mindset overall, like before we get going here about like how does a person position themselves mentally for the last 3 months?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things that we need to think about. I think that some of it is just how do we best accomplish some of the tasks that we have to do. So ultimately, we're going to have to file tax returns. Obviously, we're not going to file those till after the end of the year. But I do think talking about being prepared for that this year is even more important than it typically is. But maybe if we back up and talk first, I think the other thing, what's so difficult right now is that, do you like my cat? This is Hannah, is dealing with the uncertainty. It makes planning incredibly hard, right? And so we just really have no idea what, I think the weirdest thing for me is that we've got this recession going on. We have very high levels of unemployment. We have a ton of political volatility. Nobody knows what's going to happen after the election. And yet vet practices are in this little bubble and doing astoundingly well right now. Many of them anyways, not all, but many. And it doesn't make sense, I just look at it and say, I can't see how this is going to last, but maybe we will emerge unscathed, largely unscathed. It's a really open issue right now. I think the biggest thing from a planning standpoint is to be prepared that this could go either way. And that I don't think practices will continue to be as busy as they are now. I just don't think that that's sustainable. The big question is, will they see some of a nosedive like some practices saw in the last recession, or will it really just kind of come back to what was pre-COVID normal, or maybe down a little bit, but overall the year ends up being, or this year plus next year ends up being some growth, but not the 20% we're seeing now or the 50% we're seeing now, but not down either. I don't think we know, but I think practices when they're planning need to think about multiple alternatives. I don't think it's going to stay like it is now. So if business slows down, what are you going to do?
Right. If you slow down, what are you going to do? What if you're making, also if you're making money this year, right?
Yes.
You have money, then income, and then taxes come around. The tax man taketh. because
Yes, and I think this from a just kind of logistical planning. Some people engage in active tax planning toward the end of the year, and by that I mean that their CPA will talk with them and get an estimate of how the practice is done, say through the first 3 quarters of the year, and estimate what they think is going to happen in Q4, and then what kinds of taxes are going to be owed after the first of the year, and are there things that the practice can do to mitigate that tax bill? I think if you've been a super busy practice right now, I think tax planning, even if you've never done it before, is more important now than ever, because even if there's a limit to what you can do to reduce your taxes, you'd rather know now that you're going to owe $40,000 in April than know at the end of March where you're scrambling to figure it out. Right. So tax planning, and not every CPA provides full service tax planning. Not every, practice owner has wanted it. But I think this is a really good year to consider it and to make sure that you're working with a CPA that's going to give you what you need in that respect.
I totally agree. And I was also telling you, got to get a hold of your CPA now or find them, because come Q1, they're going to be like a rare sighting.
Yes, CBAs have been doing great. They're doing as good as veterinary practices, and they're pulling their hair out with PPP. And I think, your point there too is that tax returns for next year are going to be really tough because of the PPP loans and some of the other employment tax credits and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a big pain, honestly. And so many CPAs are tied up now with helping people figure out how to file for their PPP forgiveness, and then what's this all going to look like tax-wise, and it changes every 3.5 seconds. You want to be on their radar screen. And the other thing, and you and I were starting to talk about this before we went live here, is from a practice standpoint, or even for your own personal taxes, the better prepared and better organized you are, the more you can help your CPA do a good job, and they're going to pay more attention to you. They want to work with the people who are organized, have their documents in place, they're easy to follow. They don't want to sort through your shoebox full of receipts and try and figure out what in hell you did this year. So help yourself, by organizing your financial records, making sure they're accurate, making sure that if your CPA asks for something, you give it to them, can make life a lot easier.
And also maybe save you money and time and stress, right? Yeah. Because if you do it ahead of time, and if you're not there, oh my gosh, start hiring somebody, even if it's—
That's exactly right. Yes. And, the fortunate thing is we are just at the end of September. You do have 3 months here. And so, sure, hire a bookkeeper. If you need extra help with some of this, get it. But there is just no reason at all that that you can't get your books in order and actually be able to provide good quality information to your CPA.
Mm-hmm, totally. And there are fractional services out there. That's actually a term. So there's whole businesses out there that will give you a bookkeeper for part-time, or who will give you a comptroller who closes out your books, and they're called fractional services. And so you don't have to actually go to full-time employee to make this happen.
No. In most practices, you don't need a full-time bookkeeper if you're smaller. And, I'll say with the practices that I work with, and granted, I work with a group of practices that want to have consulting help, right? Most of the financial statements that I see are reasonably good quality, right? Some are problematic. The payroll's not entered properly, or they put loan payments on the P&L and they shouldn't be on the P&L. But periodically, I do run across some where the financial statements are absolutely dreadful. Can't even make heads or tails of how well the practice is doing. And I suspect there's more of those out there than I see, because I don't think I always see those practices as clients. But this is a great time to clean some of that stuff up.
I would totally agree, because it's only get compounded, right? Like I was talking to you beforehand, and this, when we started the show, is don't create a bonfire if you can reduce it to a little campfire, right?
That's exactly right.
Look at your whole business health, because most people are already just burned out as it is.
And that's, I think, to your point there, hiring, that's why you hire the help. Because I think the idea right now, when practices are just going great guns, I mean, they just can't do one more thing. The idea of like, ha ha, ha, yeah, I'm going to pay attention to my accounting system, it's just not happening, you know? But no, hire somebody, they're an expert at it. It's going to be worth the money. You're so busy now, you're making some extra money, you can pay them, and it reduces your stress, gets you better records. I would add something to this too. I'm actually working with a practice buyer right now. We're looking at the financial statements of a practice that's for sale. And these financial statements are so bad, we have no idea what's going on in the practice. We cannot determine what the true profitability of that practice is. There's nothing in it that couldn't be cleaned up with a little bit of time and effort. It just hasn't been done. So this whole idea of having good quality financial statements, it isn't just for filing your taxes. Ultimately, everybody's going to sell their practice, and you will make it much easier to sell, and you will get more money for your practice if it's clear what's going on financially. So lots of benefits.
Lots of benefits. And to that point, if you have clear records and you have like a 5-year exit plan, you can see where maybe some little
opportunities are. Absolutely. That's right. Because you may not know that, hey, my cost of goods sold really looks higher than most practices. Could I improve my inventory control? Or do I need to look at staff efficiency or doctor productivity? It's a great opportunity to start looking at that stuff. And, you know, really right now, because we're so close to the end of the year, what I tell people is, let's get through the end of the year. Let's include your full 2020 in the analysis. And then in the early part of next year, we can start looking at things from a management analysis standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where your services come in, because that's what you do is you kind of hey, here are the numbers, and then you add the consulting analytics on top of it and say, let's talk about the story.
That's exactly right. Let's talk about the story. Let's talk about what you're doing well, what areas could use improvement. Let's calculate your real profitability, because net income is not your real profitability, and real profits is what ultimately drives the value of the practice. And so, yeah, what kinds of changes can you make? And that's important to know, even if you're not selling for 20 years, because if you're not profitable, why don't you fix it now and get 20 years of benefits, you know? So
right, take that money for yourself, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, good. Well, where is the best place for people to reach you, do you think?
They can reach me at my website, which is www.pantherity.com. Pantherity looks like Pan the Rat. That was an unintended consequence of my company name. Pantherity is actually the genus and species of tigers, or a shortened version of the genus and species of tigers. But like I said, the unintended consequences, it looks like Pan the Rat, but it's easy for people to remember. So happy to talk with anybody about any of this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your insight today, Karen, and we'll have you back on here soon.
Look forward to it. Good luck, everybody, through the end of the year. Nice talking to you, Kelly. Bye.